So we're going to go ahead and bring up Mr. Patrick Guyton. And we get to sit down. All right, there you go. See, I can't take you anywhere.
I just drank water. That's all I had.
Did you see me watch?
That's the second time on this trip I did that. I almost fell out of the Uber, like literally. I'm gonna throw these boots away as soon as I get home. Remind me.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna have what we call our nice organic conversation. I really love this part of being able to talk to artists just about things I'm sure that we've asked 1,000 times, but things that I know might be important to someone. And then after a few minutes, we're going to open it up and we're going to let a few of you ask Patrick some direct questions too. And it won't be the people I interviewed and cleared. So we do appreciate you being here, Patrick, and your work is spectacular. And there are particular pieces that each person is drawn to, and that's always the way it is in the world of art. You come to an exhibition, you walk through the galleries, and you find the pieces that speak to you. And actually, a lot of great artists say that's when the creation really begins, is what the viewer takes.
Yes.
Because they they look at something and it reminds them of their childhood, or they look at something and it reminds them of a time in their life that meant something. I really am going to ask something that you've probably been asked 1,000 times, but is there a particular piece that you have done through all these years that sits in your mind and really matters and really is extremely with you all the time? Is there a piece like that?
I think they all have little portions like that. I mean, it would be like, tell me which one of your kids is your favorite.
Yes.
You know?
Well, you can love
That's
one the best and one the most.
Right. It's a tough question because of that. They each have their own little, corner of your heart. So there's ones that stand out to me more, like the messenger piece, the one with the falcon and the gal in the dress. Like that was a very like I mentioned the other night, I don't typically work on one thing at a time, and that was the one painting I worked on the entire time, like from beginning to ending. And it was so big that I could allow areas to dry and literally go to that area up there, and then when that was drying or wet, I could come down and do the corner. And so it was big enough that I could last on that one piece. So I took a few different images that I had over the years that because I have things that I want to make, and sometimes they're not a ready-made thing, and I'll have to compile together to get the look that I'm wanting. And so the time that it took to make that, but also it was a strange putting together when I was leafing the board. The board was so big. The first one that I did, like I said, was about 8 feet tall. And the leaf on it was all pure silver. Actually, I still do. The one that's in here is also pure silver. But when I first leafed the big board, I remember I was putting the last leaf on it, and I was standing in front of it, and I kept, my hand was going on applying the leaf, and I started to notice my reflection in the board, in the leafing, because at that point it gets almost like a mirror. So it was big enough to where I was looking at my whole image, I was watching myself do it from the outside, Yeah. It was a little Twilight Zone-y kind of a vibe. And so it just had that kind of captivation for me from the very, even just, making the leafing.
And I know you've talked about this, and a lot of the people here, we have a lot of our locals here, and then we have a lot of the Park West people, but your inspiration.
Yeah.
Your true inspiration.
Again, it varies from different piece to different piece. And we were just talking in there earlier about how each piece is different. And it's not all the same thing, or it's not a one theme of a painting and then 50 different versions of that theme of that painting. Like, I think that would make me crazy if I had to paint the same scene over and over and over again. And I need difference, because through the walk and through the time of doing art, everything, it's always been a different scenario, and that's why I keep that up. But to be inspired to do a figurative, I really need to have one that I believe in. And I know when I do a figurative and I don't really believe in it, that I'm not really getting a heart tug on it. I know when that happens versus I know when I'm really getting a heart tug on it. And I see that in the results with the piece as well. So
does your family or Gretchen, do they ever have suggestions for pieces for you to do? There you go. Well, I told you I'd put him on the spot.
I was told there'd be no trick questions. Just kidding. Actually, so the ballerina, the ballet piece that's inside, titled Svetlana, I'm getting it wrong. The Ballet Within. A little play on the words of the battle within. Actually, this was kind of a brainchild of Piper. So Piper did the photography for that figurative. Her and her friend Lana. Lana is actually the model. They did how many pictures did you do? 700 and something. And not one of them was a selfie, which was really great. So she did 700 some pictures of Lana jumping all around, doing all the Swan Lake moves. But we had her in partial white swan and partial black swan attire. And they were saying, well, just take the dress with the black swan makeup and make the black dress, and take the black swan makeup off when you do her in the white dress. And I said, why not let's just make it one piece and have it be kind of like that inner battle of good and evil, that just underlying tone. But she in the pose that I chose out of 700 and some photos that I had to go through 3 times. I know. The pose that I chose, I thought really showed the sharp-edged quality of the Black Swan character, but also the very fluid, graceful nature of the White Swan character, kind of combined in one character. And so that piece is all done in pure silver, the entire surface, even though it's blacked out, you can kind of still see through it. It's all pure 0.999 silver leaf background. The sub outfit that she has is overleafed on top of the pure silver with pure 22 karat gold. The final fun part was I thought, I want another dynamic to it. So I got some Swarovski crystal and just tastefully applied some Swarovski crystal to the piece. I didn't bedazzle it, but I wanted to just put a couple here and there so that when you were walking past, you would get that, little sparkle. That was kind of the main idea. So in that particular case, they were my inspiration to follow that through. And so, in other cases, they're really that you just go off of feeling of painting something in a day. Right. So it literally changes moment by moment.
Well, last night we kicked off the auction with a spectacular piece, a showstopper, as they say, called The Lighthouse.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a little story with you and how you feel about lighthouses. And I know a lot of people already know that, but a lot of people here don't.
Yes.
And if you share a little bit about that, because that's very touching, and I love to hear this story.
Yeah.
Which I don't know in full, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was asked to do a commission of a lighthouse initially, and I've never painted a lighthouse before. And somebody said, "Do you ever paint a lighthouse?" And I said, naturally, yes. Like many other things. So I started scouting out for lighthouses, something that would really kind of grab me, and I ended up finding the one. And again, I'm trying to remember the exact location of it, but I believe it's off the coast of Portugal is the one that's in the painting there. It just happened to be, I've painted a lot of lighthouses, but I keep coming back to that one for some reason. So if I paint, you know, and if I revisit it, it's a whole new painting, like completely different. But I just have come to admire that lighthouse because the real lighthouse is out in the middle of the ocean. There's nothing around it. It's just it's a rock with a lighthouse and a little shack on it, and it's surrounded by ocean. There's nothing. You have to come at it by boat and leave by boat. That's pretty much the definition of a lighthouse. That's pretty much the definition of a lighthouse, except the ones that are on land. Come on, buddy.
Don't you have a feeling of what lighthouses represent?
Yeah, so you know, that was one of the things. You know, I always try to bring my faith into the painting. So I don't always make it. You know, when people think of doing Christian art, they think, you know, you're going to do the standard things. And I think that's it's like other paintings. When you look at some paintings, if it's spelled out so much for you, it's kind of like a pre-written book. You already know the ending. But if there's a painting that gives you the feeling, or if it puts that within your heart without having a full-blown definition of it, that's the other side, I believe, of the coin. And so when I finished the lighthouse, I needed a name, and I came to the verse in Matthew 5:16, 14 to 16. Yes. You know, let your light so shine, you know, before men that they can see your good work and glorify your Father in heaven. And so that's kind of where the Shine the Light series came from, as it's just more of an encouragement. For those of you of faith, you know, to just, you know, I read something really interesting. A Christian shoemaker doesn't put little crosses on the shoes that he makes. He just makes the best shoes that he can make, right?
That's exactly right.
And so that's more of the idea of what I like to put into the work. I've been really experimenting with doing modernized illuminated manuscripts because my mother was a calligraphy artist, and she taught me calligraphy from a really early age as well. My dad was teaching me the brush to paint signs with, and my mom was teaching me the pen to write calligraphy with. And so I'm going to try to bring some of that into the forefront and to make a little bit of an updated version of a illuminated manuscript. I think that would be a really, like for me, just personally, to make that.
Which made me think when you're talking about the light.
Yeah.
Salty.
Yeah.
Maybe it's salt somehow.
Yes.
With the way you do the silver, would that be incredible? Maybe, I don't know exactly how that would. Wouldn't that?
Well, you know what's interesting is when I started to do the patina, like on some of the other pieces that you see on copper, and it has the wash going over top of it, and that's the natural patina process of the copper, and it's very difficult to get color to match copper because copper has so many different tones in it. And it's hard to really get a color that goes well with it. But the best time, or the best way I've ever seen it, is that like when you see somebody handle a sheet of copper and they take a torch to it and they burn the copper and it gets that natural spectrum of color, and it seems to be those colors match the copper so perfectly because they are the copper. And so I thought, excuse me, let me do something similar. And in sign painting, we used to age signs to fit in certain places. I did a water tower up in Northern California at a bed and breakfast, and they had to have a brand new water tower put in, and it was brand new galvanized steel, and it was on the hill outside of all the little cabins, and it looked so out of place because it was like a 1800s horse ranch and all this kind of stuff. So they hired me to come out and to put a patina on this, 25-foot tall water tower or whatever. And so they asked if I could do it and if I've ever done a patina job that big before. And so naturally I said, you're catching on, right? You're catching on to how this works. And so on the way there, I called the elder at the sign shop, and I said, "You're gonna have to tell me in about 2 hours how to patina a huge water tower." And so he said to me, "Do you have vinegar with you?" And I was like looking in the back seat, and I was like, "Nope, I don't happen to have any vinegar." And he goes, "Go get as much vinegar as you get. Stop at every store you can stop and buy vinegar." And so I said, "What do I do with vinegar?" He goes, "I'll tell you when you get there." So.
And let me ask you this: how did you learn this process?
His name was Vic. Vic from the south side of Chicago. Who was the south side of Chicago problem child? That boy, that guy, right?
Yep.
He just got done telling me earlier when we were looking at the lighthouse. He's like, "Yeah, problem child, south side of Chicago." While I was thinking that the guy who taught me how to sign paint, other than my dad, was a cop on the south side of Chicago who probably took you down a couple times, buddy. So anyway, he tells me get the vinegar, and so I get the vinegar. He's like, "Climb up on top and just start dumping vinegar on the top of the water tower." And so vinegar is an etching primer to galvanized steel. And so it just stripped the natural out, like the coating off. And I said, "So how long do I wait?" And he's like, "Just give it some time," And so all of a sudden it started to get rusty, like brown colors and all kinds of stuff like that. So that was the first touch of that. So when I started doing this work, I thought, when I was working with copper leafing, I was wondering if I could do the same aging process on the copper. So I basically somebody said, what did you use? And so the easiest way for me to describe that day was all the chemicals that they tell you not to clean your bathroom with at the same time happened to be what I used. So I had Windex and Fantastic and bleach. I had some vinegar, because at that point I always had vinegar. I had salt water. I made a batch of salt water. I had a car battery that that was the old kind that you could unscrew and dump the acid out. I had muriatic acid left over from pool cleaning stuff. Your fingerprints are all gone, right? Yeah. It's so I just kept dumping stuff on it to see what was going to do what. And thankfully I was outside. I didn't die. I'm still here. And this beautiful patina started to happen on the copper. And so that kind of got the ball rolling. And I forgot to mention the most volatile chemical I put on it, that when I thought I dumped it on was really going to be a problem. And I didn't know if I should dump it and run or have somebody else dump it and me observe it from far away. But I brought in the ultimate acid, and that is 7-Eleven coffee. Put that on there. And I'm not kidding. But after this happened, it started to get cooler. And I live in Southern California, so it was hot when I was doing this outside. So it started to get cooler and cooler and cooler during the winter. And the process didn't happen as much, didn't happen as easy. And so I thought, well, maybe it was the heat. Let me put a hair dryer on it. Didn't do anything. Let me get a heat gun. Didn't do anything. I just kept getting hot spots. I even tried the obligatory light it on fire. Didn't do anything. And so I thought it has to be like electric, that I could run some sort of low voltage through it to see if it would create some sort of like heat. And so I put all these chemicals, the same chemicals on there, on a board. I laid it flat on a table, and I had the rest of the car battery I didn't dump out, and I clipped the car battery, positive and negative, to the board, and then I went home. Then I realized I probably shouldn't have left, and but by the time I got back the next morning, the patina was back. It was in full, process, and the car battery was dead. And so I thought, well, it's probably going to get pricey to take one car battery per painting. And so I had an old machine left over from the sign shop, because when they closed the sign shop, they didn't tell us they were closing it. So there was 5 of us that were sign painters in this sign shop. And one day we showed up to work, and there was this, those giant dumpsters that they pick up with the big rigs. There was one of those outside, and there was 2 guys just throwing everything inside into the dumpster. And we were outside watching, and then we realized, oh, this must be the end of our job. And so they're just throwing everything away. All the materials, all the paint and brushes and paper. I mean, you name everything that was in there was going in the dumpster. And I kept thinking, I could use that. I could use that. Yeah. I could use that. So I climbed in the dumpster, and I started taking things out of the dumpster and putting them in my truck. And one of the things that I got was this little machine that would never be allowed to be sold in the world today, which was called a pounce machine. And it basically creates patterns. It's like how Michelangelo would have done the Sistine, where you take the paper or canvas, whatever, you do the rendering on it, and the assistants would come around with an awl or a nail or something, and they would poke holes in the drawing, kind of like a sewing machine with no thread. Right? Just poking holes in it. Then after they would do the fresco, they would put the paper up on the ceiling, and they would take burnt bone, crushed like talcum powder, put it in a bag, and the process was called pouncing. And so they would peel the paper, and there you would have your rendering on the fresco ready to paint. So this little machine simulates the punching holes in there. And what it does is it takes about 1 billion volts of electricity through a little cable into a pen, and it shoots electricity out of the pen through the paper or whatever, and makes the holes. It also shoots an arc of electricity about that far if you get it too close. It also
should we be scared of your artwork?
Oh my God! I used to be scared of the
process. Instead of an art
right.
project.
Well, what the other sign guys used to like to do in the morning when I would be coming in from a late night of performing or whatever I was doing, at 8 o'clock in the morning, they would put me on pounce duty. And there was a big 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of steel on an A-frame, and we'd put the paper there and pounce it. And they would love to do one thing that was the highlight of their day. And they would love to take the ground wire off. And if you've ever seen anybody actually hit with lightning, it would throw me back into the A-frame behind me, and they would laugh for at least till lunchtime. And so...
And you fell for it every time? Every time, yes.
And I would have to sit down for like 20 minutes and gather myself. But anytime when I do a piece in there and it's cold and I got to do the process, I pull this little machine out. I usually have to rewire it because it's probably from the 30s or 40s. There's only flathead screws that make this machine up. It's kind of a tip off to its age, but it's a devastator. So when I'm making copper pieces like that, the funnest part about it for me is, one, I hope I'm not going to die doing it, but at the same time, I think of how many laughs we used to have in the sign shop with that. And that's been, and when you talk about inspiration, like the guys I work with, and a lot of that are also a big part of that.
Well, you have a great story to tell, a great history with the way you've developed into the artist you are today. And I know that really helps create the soul that your art has. And that's a really great thing. Yeah. Because of Patrick's limited time that he has to be on the airplane, I want to give you guys the opportunity to ask him a couple of questions. And I know 2 or 3 of you want to ask some things. And so we're going to open that up and see if there's something that he can answer for some of you who've been collecting his work, or some of you who are new to collecting his work, or just want to know more about him. So we'll open up the floor if anyone has a question. If you don't mind just directing it at Patrick, that would be great. Anybody have a question? All right, I was going to say I had 50 inside there, so go ahead.
Well, I'm really curious about the process. Speak up.
I'm going to repeat it.
Yeah.
You're curious about the process.
Just the process in general?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am.
It's kind of interesting because to take you from beginning to end is sounds easier than what it is. I was just mentioning earlier about the lighthouse. Like the substrate that I use is made for me for this purpose. Like the sign shop or sign manufacturer I say that I worked for, they produced this product after I went to them and told them what here's what I want to do. Here's the art I want to put on it. Here's how I'm looking to do it. What I'm all the paints and the types of things I'm trying to use. And I said I need it to be archival. And a lot of work on metal. Is interesting when I talk to other people that work on metal. I know they probably don't know metal as much as they probably should know metal. I think they're just doing art, and art, metal expands and contracts. It's just the way it is. And so I'm working on metal and I'm thinking, oh, it's going to expand and contract. The wrong paint, the wrong this, the wrong that is going to crack paint that expands and contracts. So I just know that from sign painting, right? So we developed a product that basically is a sign type product, the substrate itself. So it's a cored substrate, which means that it has a center core. It's 2 pieces of aluminum center cord that core acts like a radiator for hot and cold temperatures, and a kind of manifold radiator spreads it around so it doesn't hot spot or cold spot. It also allows it to stay so it expands and contracts. Again, it's a sign type product. So they put this together for me. I tested a few. Some didn't work. I tested, a couple others that didn't work, and we finally landed on one that I liked. From there, I have to put sizing on it, which is like a time-sensitive glue that it's a resiny type substance that dries very film thin. Then the leafing goes down. I leaf it square by square by square on every single piece. So a lot of people say, do you buy the board that way and then just do art on it? I wish. No. I have. It's literally, again, when I think of the process and think of what we're trying to do with it, it really doesn't make sense to do it. But because I can do it and kind of adapt the animation cell amount of work to it, that we're able, it can work. But in this particular case, the leafing's got to go down. Then the leafing has to be stricken. Like you have to get all the flake leaf off of it. It has to be flattened out. In some cases, I paint it raw. Other cases, I have to seal it, then paint it, in which I will burn through the sealer back to the raw so I can manipulate the raw. Other times, I overleaf on top of it. Once everything's dry, build up layers of leafing. Those all have to be coated and sanded and coated and sanded.
Do you have an assistant or a couple of assistants?
Oh yeah. But what I was to say is the end justifies the means. You know what I mean? So it's a pain. It's not smart, I would imagine, to do it the way I'm doing it. But again, like the product at the end is really what it's all about. And it's just a matter of how do we get to that end product with the most, simplest way, but also keep with the quality of the
Well, it's
of the
one of the
product.
reasons why your work has so much integrity.
Thank you.
There's no question about it. Yes.
Yeah.
And luminosity. Is that what
Yeah.
you said, Lee? Yes, luminosity for sure. Yeah. Yeah, the luminosity, Lee had brought that up to me, sending me some notes, I believe, and it was about the fact that the luminosity in your paintings. And I want to say something, and I know this is, when you go online to look at your paintings or you see them in a picture, whatever, it does absolutely. I'm sorry.
Welcome to my nightmare.
Because look, I loved his work. I'd seen his work before, so I knew it was fabulous. But when I was showing some of the pieces and people, oh yeah, that's beautiful. When it got shipped here and you take it out and you're looking at it, it's breathtaking, because of the luminosity. That's exactly the truth.
Thank you.
And Kaylin and I said this, and I said this is why I teach you guys. You can never ever judge real artwork unless you're standing in front of it.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. I'll always believe that. Doesn't mean you can't love a painting or buy something online, or you can.
Yeah.
But when you stand in front of it, it's a complete, it's that's the real deal, and
Yeah.
that's what should be happening. And I wish people could do that more and more. But
Yeah.
that's that luminosity. And I know you had Larry a question.
Patrick, every piece you do is an original piece, yet you also do editions where you can get the same one done over again. How do you make that work to do those additional pieces? I don't want to call them duplicates. But,
Yeah.
You know,
Well, nothing's numbered. If you should notice, it's not like a 1 of 100, 2 of 100. I mean, I do have my cherry blossom poster in there, the little commemorative one that I made personally. I made that, and I have a number on it for 3. There's up to 300 that I just figured I'm just going to make 300 of them. Right? I don't have 300 sitting around, but you know what I mean. So, but I make that from scratch on pure silver. I burnish it, do color on it. I mean, it's not like this thing where I think people today, they think of multiplied pieces, and you think that somebody pushes a button and ching, cha-ching, 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 and they just come flying out the other side, and you sign them, which does happen in the world, right? That is a way that it works. Not with this. So for those pieces that you're talking about, I developed a print system that is proprietary to my product. It's not something that other people are doing. I actually know, one other person that I know that shares the process, and it was kind of developed between the two of us together. In reality, so it was a trial and error, which we started out with. The gentleman that created the G clay process tried to put into print this what we're doing. This is back in 2008, and so after almost a year of him trying with the machinery and the things that were available at the time, he finally came to us and he said, "This is not. It's just time is not with us on this to do this." He said, "You're going to have to wait until something catches up to pull this off," and so he just stopped doing it at the time. So over the years, I've been trying to figure different ways. I tried, I don't know, 6, 7 different other avenues that were based around that avenue. None of them worked until we acquired one specific piece of machinery, altered it in 2 different ways that we were able to retrofit it with some other equipment to turn it into something that would print one area, not the whole thing. I could isolate an area, and I could choose what that area was. So in the production style pieces that you're talking about, where you see more than one, usually that's because I'll still have to leaf everything, go through the same process and colorization, burnishing, all the hand embellishment, everything that goes into that same type of a thing. But I can isolate one area for those specific pieces and save the time in production for that. Is that on everything? Absolutely not. The process itself is also a nightmare, and I have to do the entire setup myself. There's no one else that does it. Like, that's an exclusively me thing. And so I'm making the painting initially, but then when I have to go to do a production style version of it, I also have to make the files personally to make it. So it's still coming all from my hand. But people say, well, there's been times when people say, well, what on this piece is done that way? Nothing. And again, it's only on a production type of thing, unless I exclusively say this production piece is still a hand done 100% exclusive, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense, yeah. To a degree.
Well, like I said, it's proprietary, and I think in the world today where you have so many people trying to mimic you, and so many people saying, "Oh, that works really well, let me start doing that." And I've seen a handful of people coming along in the last few years, just thinking all of a sudden, I can't believe how many people paint hummingbirds and bonsai trees these days. It's like, wow, I didn't even know that was part of your repertoire. But I see that it is now. So, it's just that kind of world. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
And
so there's only so many guitar licks.
Well, that's it.
They're going to be repeated.
There's only so many ways you can play a D minor.
That's right, exactly.
So you have to stay on top of you have to stay on top of what you're doing, and that's why you need to try to be the leader in it, and not the one that comes along just mimicking it. And that's why I try to all the time bring something different to the walls and to the table, where it's a new texture, it's a new style, it's a new use of chemicals. cables, or who knows what's going to happen to it next. But the idea is to keep being the person in the forefront leading it. Otherwise, you just have people mimicking you, coming up behind and saying, oh, here, we're just going to adapt that into our style, and I don't want that either.
Anybody else? Another question for Patrick? Yes, ma'am.
I know I had asked you if you could make that lighthouse smaller.
Yeah.
And you said it's difficult because there's so much to it and whatnot.
Let me repeat the question. She would like to know if he can make the lighthouse piece, but smaller.
Yes.
Right. But because I loved it, I thought it was magnificent. How do you go about saying I want one of those? Because do you just produce when you feel it, or does it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I don't have an inventory of lighthouses, if that's what you mean. No, but again, like that particular piece, I have no. That's like when I do those, they're full paint, 100% painted pieces, right? And they all are painted pieces, but that's like just there's none of that production medium in there. And what I would have to do to just make a smaller version of that is I would just have to literally paint a smaller one, right?
Yeah.
So it turns into like a commission at that point, right? So I'm just saying, like, I don't have an inventory of anything really. So in that particular case, yeah, or yeah, I try to keep a lighthouse available here and there in random sizes, random leaf colors, or random, like some are on gold and silver, some are on copper, or I'll mix it up. Sometimes the background is very distressed, sometimes it's very clean. They're all different in and of themselves. But like I said, I like to try to keep one in the system because I don't have an inventory to pull from. Okay, well, we need one in this show. Just go grab one out of the inventory. So if there's one in a show, I had to paint it, and that's the only way it got there. Yeah.
Now you have to pay the
Okay, we're gonna take a couple more. So we want to give Patrick a little bit of time to be able to, if you want him to sign a poster for you or get your pictures before he has to hop to go to the airport. So Marianne, I think you have a question.
So you can be commissioned to do what she's asking for?
I'm gonna say yes, but I don't know if John Block's still sitting out there.
I think he's inside, so you're
Okay.
free to.
Yeah,
sneak
I
that
do.
in.
Well, obviously, here's the thing. Because of the process, I have to do commissions. It's just how it is. Like I said, I can't just say, oh, here, yeah, I'll send you one of the, pull me one of those. I don't have that. So, well, that's the other side of it too. That's the other side of it as well. Exactly.
Okay, I think we have another question back here. We're getting commissions over here, John, but I'm getting all the commissions. So.
I'm saying no. I just want to let you know. I said no. They're twisting my arm. I'm saying no because I'm not supposed to do that.
The answer is always yes for the right price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, he's asking about how you can see the beams of light coming out of the lighthouse.
Yeah. You mean the horizontal beams across? Those are just put on with a transparent, actually there's 1, 2, 3 different layers of transparent glazed white. So most of my colors are transparent, and then sometimes I'll thicken them up with obviously some solid, and I'll turn them into semis, or if I need a solid. So in that particular case, there's 3 different glazed colors of white that go on there, and one of them I put a little bit of metallic in, so when you're hitting the right light, you can see almost like a dust beam, almost, if you will. But then the center of that's just a nice chunk of acrylic, and I have that one little grain of metal in the center right there. It's like that multi-spectral grain. So when you are in that right spot, it flashes. Mm-hmm. It almost looks like someone just hit a switch and it turned on. So.
Okay, we're going to take one last question right over here.
You mentioned hummingbird.
Yeah.
How did you come to the hummingbird?
Oh God,
He's asking how he came to the hummingbird as a vision.
Probably not the romantic, glamorous explanation that most people would expect, but I have a lot of that, I guess. When we first started out, I was in the garage. I had a gold board on an easel, probably 20 by 20, and it was sitting there, and I was at that first point of what am I going to paint on it? You know I got to paint something on it. What am I going to paint on it? And I was like, you can't put anything heavy on it. You know, you can't put like a painting of a truck on it, or, you know what I mean? It needs to have a delicate nature, kind of like what it is. You know, leafing is delicate. It's light. It'll float right before your eyes. And so I remember I was saying to Gretchen, I was like, well, what about like a hummingbird? It has like metallic nature to it. It's light. It kind of marries well with the gold as far as like how thin it is and how like lighter than air that it is. And so at the moment that I was saying this, I'm not even sure the words were all the way out of my mouth. I opened up a peach Snapple. And we're talking further, and I happened to like read the lid while we're talking just randomly. You know, they have little sayings on the lid. The lid at the end of that sentence was, a hummingbird weighs less than a penny. Fun fact number 17. I still have that cap nailed up right above my workstation. But basically, I remember I said, what about a hummingbird? And I'm like, I showed her the cap. I was like, there's your sign, you know.
So actually, when I asked you about your inspiration, we could have just said Snapple.
Well, see, that's what I was telling you. It depends on what thing we're talking about, because they each one have their own like thing. Like swans, I have the paper swan, you know, the origami swan, and I did an origami orchid with it. And I left the house a day, and I remember I was telling her, she was like, "What are you making today?" And I was like, "I think I'm going to try to do like a realistic origami-looking swan." She's like, whatever. And I drive into work, come to the first red light from my house. And I'm sitting there at the red light, and a lady pulls up next to me, and I look down in her car, and hanging from her rearview mirror was a paper origami swan. There's your sign, you know?
There you go.
Yeah. So I tried not to be too dense. So I'm always looking around, you know, what other things, or where are we going with this from here? So,
Well, Patrick,
no, actually, I went to work, and this one kid that I had doing shipping, I was told him the story, and he came back and he gave me he knew how to make one, and so he went and folded one up perfectly and gave it to me. And that very paper swan is what I used to paint the very first one that I did.
That's a great story. And thanks again. Okay, thank you,
guys.
Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you.
A round of applause
Thank your
for
staff.
Patrick.
Thank all the helpers. Thank everybody. I appreciate you guys
Thank
coming
you.
out, and it's been my honor. Thank you. Thank you.